And welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and these are the, I would say, biggest surprises, let's say, from last year as far as commanders go. I went back, as I typically do every year, I believe, looked at all the commanders from last year that we got, and of course, we get an absolute ton every year. And I picked out the ones that surprised me the most. Not necessarily underrated, not necessarily like this commander is so good. There's probably a few on here that I personally think are really, really good. But there's definitely, I would say the majority of the list here is, I'm just surprised, like, wow, nobody's playing this commander, or at least not as much. Obviously, everyone's playing every commander that comes out now. You know, like some of these are way down the list from where I thought they would be. I know the reason is likely going to be, for the most part, that we get like 400 commanders a year now. So even commanders that I think back to like 4 or 5 years ago when I started my channel, and it's like, man, these commanders would have been insanely popular back then, and now they don't really see any play at all. The first one on the list is a perfect example of that. The Swarm Weaver, 2 black and a green. Legendary artifact creature, Scarecrow. So it's a Scarecrow commander. I know we already have one. 2/3, when the Swarm Weaver enters, create 2 1/1 black and green insect creature tokens with flying. Again, right out of the gate, that's already a pretty good ability. As long as there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard, insects and spiders you control get +1/+1 and have death touch. Now, I know that's not turned on all the time. It's not hard to turn on. That's a fantastic Anthem effect, giving the +1/+1 to not just 1, but 2 different creature types. And Death Touch is really good. Giving Death Touch to an entire group of creatures is fantastic, obviously. The fact that this is both combining insects and spiders. And again, this is a perfect example of, if this card had come out like 4 years ago, it would have been insanely popular. Everyone would have been like, finally a spider tribal commander, or finally insects. I can make an insect deck, right? But of course, we've gotten a bunch of both, I believe. Also, this is a Scarecrow, which is a little weird, maybe. I think it's kind of neat. I probably a good flavor win there. I like that your commander just cranks out tokens on its own. I think people probably don't love the fact that you don't get a whole lot of benefit until you get Delirium, although, of course, in these colors, not very difficult. It's only got 482 decks on EDH Rec. I know Duskmourn it hasn't been that long, but again, I'm comparing to the cards that are already there, right? So as far as the decks go here, it's really not that important. More so, it's where is it on the list, right? So for this guy, there is 13 commanders just from Duskmourn alone that are more popular. So it's like, wow, really? This seems like a commander that a lot of people would have gone after. I mean, again, maybe a few years ago for sure, but even in today's meta, I thought more people would go after this one. Basim Ibn Ishik. No, not sure if I got that right. Assassin's Creed was definitely a set that a lot of people largely ignored. There was sort of a weird reason why. It was because I think the booster packs were small or something. As a guy who only buys singles, I don't really notice these things. There was a couple of really great commanders, though, that from that set. A lot of great cards, too. Honestly, I could probably make a video talking about all the great cards from Assassin's Creed. This is a commander, and in fact, there's 2 commanders on this list. Both of them are commanders that I myself was not familiar with at all. I had a patron show up to a game with it, and they beat everyone's butt. And in fact, both of the Assassin's Creed commanders on this list, the situation was exactly the same, where it was an absolute domination. One guy absolutely destroyed the other 3. This was one of them. Blue and a black human assassin 2/2. Whenever you cast a historic spell, draw a card. That's already pretty good. Talk about a commander that if it had come out 5 or 6 years ago, everybody would be playing it. Every time I cast a historic spell, I just draw a card. That's great. But also, he can't be blocked this turn. This ability triggers only once each turn, no problem. And then whenever he deals combat damage to a player, put a +1/+1 counter on him. So he's putting counters on himself when he deals combat damage to a player, and then he's also making himself unblockable. Like, wow, right? And I know this guy doesn't seem very menacing, but the patron I was playing against made a Voltron deck with this, and of course, casting a historic spell is easy. Mostly artifacts, right? Artifacts are the easiest way to do it. He just demolished all of us. He got his commander pretty big. Of course, you have, some control-y aspects that can help protect your commander. His commander kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, knocked out one guy. and then knocked me out and then knocked out the last guy pretty easily. I mean, making your commander unblockable is pretty good, right? Having a card draw on your commander also really, really good, right? This guy is pretty darn good. So this guy would maybe fall into a category of maybe I'm not that surprised because it's from Assassin's Creed. Again, maybe if this guy was from Murders of Karlov Manor or something, or, Modern Horizons 3, it would be more popular. Again, just like with, a lot of the Universes Beyond stuff gets a little overshadowed. Maybe people don't like playing Universes Beyond, but this is certainly a commander that people need to give a second look. Ione, Center of the Web, 4 black and a green. Elf Detective 5/4. It is kind of funny. The fact that Ione is a detective is kind of funny, I'll just say. Has Menace. Whenever Ione, Center of the Web, enters the battlefield or attacks, you may collect evidence for, if you do, create 2/1 black and green spider creature tokens with Menace and Reach. Sacrifice 4 tokens. Surveil 2. Then draw 2 cards. You gain 2 life. Holy heck, that's a whole lot happening on one card. It is 6 mana, but you're in green, and also I would say, you're in green and black. And then also I would say this is probably a commander that you want to do a little bit of setup before you get it out right away. There's so much going on here. There's 1,000 different ways to build this commander, doing the tokens. You can throw, a graveyard strategy in there. You can throw a life gain thing in there a little bit if you want. Obviously, you can do the spider thing again if you want. A lot of the spider stuff deals with tokens. I thought this would be a way more popular commander. Again, maybe because people didn't like Murders of Karlov Manor. It's sort of weird you hear the commander community trashing Murders of Karlov Manor all the time, but yet all these cards are being put in your deck. So I don't know, maybe you should rethink that. The aesthetic, sure, I totally get it. The aesthetic is pretty bad, but the cards are pretty good, and this is a really great commander that I'm surprised is not more popular. Eartha Joe, Frontier Mentor, 2 red, white, Core Advisor, 2/4. When Eartha Joe, Frontier Mentor enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 red mercenary creature token with tap. Target creature you control gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Activate only as a sorcery. That ability is just a tack on, almost a flavor thing for the set, essentially. Like they're just basically throwing a mechanic from the set into this. Pretty much can ignore that, in my opinion, although you could build around it. Whenever you activate an ability that targets a creature or player, copy that ability. You may choose new targets for the copy. You don't even have to pay mana for that ability. There is 1,000 ways, and maybe it's just not super apparent with this commander. That's why no one's going after it. But just think about that ability. It's a Panharmonicon effect for targeting stuff, whether it's yours or your opponent's. And whenever you activate an ability, it just has to target a creature or player, and you get a free copy of it. That's incredible. I had considered this commander, funny enough, when I had my Boros Lands deck. I'll just throw one idea here. When I had my Boros Lands deck, I was trying to find a commander that fit it. I had a commander that didn't really fit it at all. And I was considering this one simply because, there was a few cards in my deck that it worked with, Seismic Assault being the big one. Because, of course, Seismic Assault is an activated ability that's going to be targeting a creature or player. So every time I discarded a land to deal 2 damage, I would get a free copy. So now all my lands that I discarded doing 4 damage. That's great, right? It's so easy to abuse that ability. I'm really surprised. And again, works on your stuff, works on your opponent's stuff. Maybe that's what people are missing here. Maybe people see the mercenary token and they're like, okay, so I'm going to copy activated abilities that target my creatures. No, you can target your opponents and your opponent's stuff as well. So a lot you can do. Really open-ended commander for sure. Genku Future Shaper, 2 white and a blue Moonfolk Wizard, 2/5. Whenever another non-token permanent you control leaves the battlefield, choose one that hasn't been chosen this turn. Create a creature token with those characteristics. A 2/2 white fox with vigilance, a 1/2 blue Moonfolk with flying, a 1/1 black rat with lifelink, and you can pay 3 white and a blue to put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. And it is so easy to get that trigger. Again, that's another situation where that is such an open-ended ability. This, for me, is just one that I'm kind of surprised isn't more popular. Whenever another non-token permanent you control leaves the battlefield. So there's 1,000 ways to do that. Obviously, blinking is probably the easiest. It is choose one that hasn't been chosen this turn. So that means you can choose all 3 in a single turn. If you have 3 different non-land permanents leave the battlefield, I can just play a bounce land, return it to my hand. Again, the lands theme, if you're not aware, the original Moonfolk from Champions of Kamigawa returned lands to hand. So you could very much do the Moonfolk tribal thing and return my lands to my hand, which is actually a really great theme, especially with the MDFCs and all that. You can return them to your hand to cast them later, which everyone loves doing so much. A lot going on here. I know you definitely could build around the token theme. I probably wouldn't because, of course, whenever another non-token permanent you control leaves the battlefield is a bit of a non-bull with the tokens you're making. Maybe that's the part people don't love about it. But for me, I'm just like figuring out ways for permanents to leave the battlefield, and then those tokens just get created, which just attack my opponents with them. I mean, you don't really need anything else there. Obviously, putting token support in here is certainly an easy thing that you can do. I mean, I don't think it's the greatest commander ever. I just think it's very open-ended, and I'm kind of surprised more people aren't going after it. Kitza Otter Elite, and I'm tried to grab at least one commander from each set that we got last year. I think this is the only one I grabbed from Bloomborough because I actually didn't really like a lot of the commanders from Bloomborough. This is the one though that I thought, I mean, it was at the bottom. Again, as far as the decks go, I mean, it hasn't even been a year yet, so we're really not sure where things are going to end up, but this one's at the bottom. This is the least popular commander from Bloomborough, and it's a little surprising. So 1 and a blue, Otter Wizard, 1/3, Vigilance, Prowess. Tap, draw a card, then discard a card. So again, just that alone. 2 mana commander with all that stuff on it is pretty good, right? Because of course, you can sit there casting spells and your commander's getting bigger and then you can attack with it. And of course, Vigilance actually used to mean something, but now Vigilance just goes on every creature that has a tap ability so that you can attack with it and then tap it on the second main phase, which of course you can do here. Draw your second card each turn. All that stuff works here. Whenever you discard, all that stuff works here. Of course, there's a million things you can do there. And then on top of all that, pay 2, tap, copy target instant or sorcery spell you control. You may choose new targets for the copy. Activate only if Kitz's power is 3 or greater. Well, that's not very hard to do, right? Of course, it has prowess. But on top of that, I mean, really I would probably find half a dozen ways to give my commander a +2 to its power, which is super easy to do. Just any equipment that gives your commander a +2 on power, and then mission accomplished, right? You don't even have to worry about doing that anymore. So now I can just pay 2 and tap my commander to copy a spell every turn. Seems pretty good. 2 mana commander with all that stuff going on, very unpopular. I'm a little surprised. Wily Duke Atin Hero. This is one that I would probably say is my favorite on this list. If there was any commander on this list, or maybe any commander from last year that I personally would have built around, this would probably be it. Just because it fits in the theme that one of the themes that I like so much. It's also in my favorite color combination, I think. And also, of course, there's a lot to build around here, and it's very open-ended. So 1 black and a white human ranger 4/2 with vigilance. Whenever Wily Duke becomes tapped, you gain 1 life and draw a card. So fantastic payoff. There's no limitation here. I know in green and white colors, it doesn't seem super easy to sort of untap and retap your commander. The 1 life gain, of course, means you can throw life gain trigger stuff in here, and I absolutely would. If you've gained life this turn, create a horse or something like that. Card draw on your commander, that's pretty good. I mean, because of that, obviously, you can very easily forego a lot of the card draw you would normally put in your deck and just figure out more ways to tap and untap your commander. I just like that theme. I mean, it's a neat commander. We never really had one like this before. Life gain and card draw, and also just finding really neat ways to tap your commander, but also all those other creatures that fit in that theme as well. So, am I surprised this is as low as it is? I don't know. I guess really it's hard to be surprised entirely anymore because, again, we get so many commanders that basically the top 2 or 3 from every set get a ton of attention, and then mostly everything else gets ignored. This is maybe my favorite commander to build around from last year, though. Kiora the Rising Tide, 2 and a blue, Moonfolk Noble, 3/2. When it enters the battlefield, draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards. Again, already there's a lot we can build around there. I mean, you could just make a blinking deck with this commander. Whenever Kiora attacks, if there are 7 or more cards in your graveyard, which is obviously really easy to do because you're looting, you may create Scion of the Deep, a legendary 8/8 blue octopus creature token. This is probably my second choice if I was to build around a commander from last year. And the reason why is because it very easily fits in the legendary token theme that I talked about in my 10 deck. Well, I've talked about in a bunch of videos, but I talked about particularly my 10 deck ideas video last month. And here in particular, because you are making a big legendary token in 8/8, right? So if I have a mirror gallery, or if I have a mirror box, or if I have a Sakashima, I'm creating 8/8 tokens every single time my commander attacks. I mean, there really is 1,000 ways you can go with this. You can also do, I'm going to attack with my commander. And I realize your commander is just a 3/2, but again, there's easy ways to build around that. You just give it some sort of evasion, and which again in blue is super easy to do. I'm going to attack with my commander. And of course, I'm going to create another token when it attacks. But of course, because it's legendary, it's going to die. And I don't have, my mirror box, mirror gallery, or whatever. That's okay. I'll sacrifice the original. I mean, I could attack with it, but I could also sacrifice the original to some other effect because I know I'm going to get another one, right? So I don't know. There's a lot of neat ways to go with this. You even could just do the looting. Again, you could just blink, 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 and the octopus is a little added bonus. I could make a really great deck with this commander. And again, this one is right at the bottom from Foundations. Nobody's playing it. Kellen Inquisitive Prodigy, again, probably 3 in a row here with probably my top 3 commanders. Again, if I was to build a deck for myself personally, from the commanders of last year, it would be Wily Duke, Kiora, and Kellen Inquisitive Prodigy. I think this guy's really great. Again, really unpopular, and we're already past the year point with this guy, so this guy's never going to be popular in the format. I think mainly because it's a Simic commander that's not doing the Simic thing, but for me, that's a good thing. It's like, okay, well, now I can make a deck that isn't just the boring old Simic deck that draws cards and ramps and blah, 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 right? And with this one, I actually I for sure made one deck on my channel. So 2 green and a blue, Human Fairy Detective. And of course, it's an adventure. So the Tail of the Suspect, blue and a green, sorcery adventure, investigate. You may play an additional land this turn, which is okay. Something you can do earlier in the game. As I've said, I don't love the growth spiral effects in Commander. I don't think they're very good. If you don't have the land to put into play, it's basically 2 mana, draw a card, which is awful. But with this, it's a lot better because, of course, it's essentially in your starting hand because it's in the command zone, right? So it's like guaranteeing I have a growth spiral in my opening hand. That's where you want to play the additional land. That's where it actually gets good. So you are almost guaranteed going to put a land from your hand into play with your commander with this ability. And also, I have a Kellen deck, not this Kellen, another Kellen. And man, the adventure is so great because, of course, you pay the 2 and then you pay the 4 after to get your commander out. And then if your commander dies and goes back to the command zone, you pay 4 because you're paying the adventure side. So you're paying the 4 to get it out of the command zone. The other side is just 4 again, right? The second side, the more expensive side essentially, is never going to be more expensive. It's always going to be 4 unless you don't cast the adventure side, but you probably want to, right? And the creature side is really interesting. So 3/4 Flying Vigilance whenever Kellen Inquisitive Prodigy attacks, destroy up to 1 target artifact. If you controlled that permanent, draw a card. Very interesting. And again, there's a lot of different ways you can go with this. You can just use your commander as card draw, as a lot of people have pointed out. If you have any artifact like a Darksteel Citadel or something that's indestructible, you can just sit there, just every time your commander attacks, you draw a card. Just great value. And again, that sort of becomes a prototypical Simic deck with I'm ramping with the adventure side and then I'm drawing cards. But you really, really got to put the Liquid Metal Torque effects in the deck because, of course, you just turn whatever your opponents have that you don't like into an artifact and destroy it with your commander. That's really great. Very unpopular commander. And again, for me, this is one of my favorites from last year, and I'm surprised more people aren't going after it. Getting to some more commanders that are not really my thing at all, and I have zero interest in building around them, but I'm just surprised more people aren't. General Crete, the Boltbringer, 2 and a red, Goblin Soldier 2/2. This is from the Jumpstart, the Foundations Jumpstart, I think, came out at the same time as Foundations, right? Whenever one or more goblins you control attack, create a 1/1 red goblin creature token that's tapped and attacking. So you have a goblin commander that's making goblins. And then whenever another creature you control enters, General Crete the Boltbringer deals 1 damage to each opponent, so impact tremors on your commander. That's incredible, right? Now, I know people will say, well, it's a worse Perforos. Okay, but it's a goblin that's making goblins, so you can lean more heavily into the goblin tribal thing, right? This guy is surprisingly unpopular. Again, I know it hasn't been that long, but just looking at the commanders from that set, I think I had this guy number 2 or top 3 I thought would be most popular. Not even close. It's number 12. So a little surprising. And I don't think that's going to change a whole lot. Maybe there's just just in mono red, there's got to be at least a dozen commanders that you can be playing for Goblin Tribal. So it might be another one of the, okay, people are just tired of this whole thing. That effect certainly plays into things, but still a little surprising for me. Kith, Famed Mechanist, 1 blue, red, and a white. Dwarf Artificer, 3/3. Fabricate 1. Other non-token creatures you control have Fabricate 1. That's great. And also, pay 2, tap, choose 1, populate or proliferate. So if we ignore everything else, just having a commander that both populates and proliferates. Talk about open-ended. I mean, it's not, you're not going to be doing it a lot, I suppose, but man, I thought this would be way more popular. I mean, it's pretty popular. It's doing all right. But given the open-ended ability here, and I don't know, maybe we're getting to a point now where commanders that are super open-ended are actually a little less popular, and the commanders that it's like here, stapled on it is exactly what you want to do. Here's exactly what you want to do with this commander, and the commander is basically telling you what to put in your deck. Maybe those commanders people more go after because you don't have to think about it too hard. I don't know. But this one for me, I'm like, wow, that's going to be crazy popular. Maybe the Jeskai colors. Is it because populating and proliferating in Jeskai colors is a little weird, maybe? That could be the case. I would say for me, this commander feels like a bad commander. The fact that it's Jeskai might be putting people off it a little bit. Again, it's kind of popular, but I'm really surprised it's not more popular. It's definitely not my thing. I'm just surprised people are going after it. Vannifar Evolved Enigma, again from Murders of Karlov Manor, and again, one that I had, I was like, wow, this is insanely busted, because I thought there was so many, not so much open-ended. I mean, it is kind of open-ended, but more the really powerful things you could do with it. So 2 green and a blue Elf Ooze Wizard. 3/4 at the beginning of combat on your turn, choose 1, and of course, the wording, again, they use that wording particularly on legendary creatures now. Well, a lot of cards, I think because of commander, so that I can immediately play that card and then get the effect on my turn. If someone board wipes the next turn, at least I got something off of my commander. So at the beginning of combat on your turn, choose 1, cloak a card from your hand, or put a +1/+1 counter on each colorless creature you control. And, I guess it's nice that you have the option there. I don't know if anybody would ever build this around the +1/+1 count. Like, I don't know if you would ever use that. If I was building around this commander and playing this commander, I probably wouldn't, unless I had no cards in hand. That's probably the only way. Or unless I had like a board wipe, something I don't want to cloak in my hand, I guess. That's the only way I would use that second ability. The first ability, the cloaking, is just way too good. And the big reason why is because, of course, you don't have to cloak a creature. If you're not familiar with cloaking, it's essentially manifesting, except it has ward 2. And that means I'm putting it face down on the table, and I can flip it up anytime if it's a creature. But if it's not a creature, I can flip it up in another way. And of course, there's lots of ways to do that, especially in these colors. Blinking, again, is the easiest way. If I have a Conjurer's Closet, I can cloak a Omniscience from my hand onto the battlefield, and then on my end step, just flip it over. And now I have an Omniscience, right? Because it comes in face up. So just that interaction made it so that this commander had some huge possibilities, and I'm kind of surprised it's not more popular. There is 10 commanders more popular than Vannifar. I thought it would be like top 2, top 3. And again, for all the people that are crapping Karlov Manor, you're probably going to be telling me in the comments, yeah, but there's so many great commanders from Murders of Karlov Manor. Yeah, you're right. There was a lot of really powerful commanders from Murders of Karlov Manor. Again, rethink it. Think about the commanders from that set that you're probably playing, or a lot of other people are probably playing, and think about the 99 cards as well. This one's a big surprise for me still, though, even though we did get a lot of really powerful commanders from Murders of Karlov Manor. Maybe Simic people are starting to get tired of. There is that to play in as well, but still a surprise. Yes Man, Personal Securitron, and I tried to grab one from every set. This is the one I grabbed from Fallout, and it's a really neat commander. Again, I have a patron with this deck. There's a lot of really neat things you can do. It's a little goofy. It is Universes Beyond. Still, though, I'm a little surprised it's not more popular. 2 and a white. Legendary artifact creature robot 2/2. Target opponent gains control of Yes Man. Personal Securitron. So you're donating your commander. That's definitely different. When they do, you draw 2 cards and put a quest counter on Yes Man. Activate only during your turn. So you're going to be passing your commander around, which might not seem great, although there is a lot of things you can work around there. Of course, you can regain control of it lots of different ways. Blinking, again, is a great one because the blink spells typically, I think almost always will say, return that card to play under owner's control. So as long as you have a blink spell that targets your opponent's creatures, right? You can donate your commander, blink it, and it comes back into play under your control, so you get it back, right? And that's particularly important because your commander has a leaves the battlefield trigger. When Yes Man leaves the battlefield, its owner, which is you, of course, creates a tapped 1/1 white soldier creature token for each quest counter on it. So there's no way you're not getting those tokens. And of course, because you're creating soldier tokens, you're creating tokens, so you go the token route. You're creating soldiers, so you can do some soldier tribal stuff. There's a lot to build around here. It's a pretty neat commander. And again, because you're passing it around and letting your opponents draw cards and stuff like that, gets very political. If you like that kind of thing, it makes it so that you don't really become a target, because you're letting your opponents draw cards and, hey, everyone's having fun. A little bit of that secret sort of hug deck where, yeah, I'm going to let you draw cards, but then I'm going to eventually kill you with what I'm doing. I think it's a pretty neat commander. I realize it's from Fallout. Maybe you don't like that thing, but this might be one you want to give a try. All right, speaking of Fallout, our Basir, again from Assassin's Creed. This is the other one that I was alluding to that I played against the Patriot. I had no idea. We sat down and we started playing, and I'm like, our Basir, what is that? It really doesn't look like much on its face, but man, he absolutely demolished us. And when I say he demolished us, so the three of us were dead. We had 0 life, and he pretty much just killed us with his commander's ability. He was at, I believe he was above 40 at the end of the game. So red and a white human assassin 2/2, when our Basir or another non-token historic permanent enters the battlefield under your control, deals 1 damage to each opponent and you gain 1 life. And I will be making a video right away here. In fact, I've talked about 2 commanders on this list that have this wording, and I will be making a video right away about how the commander format has been speeding up quite a bit. And obviously, that's not a big secret. There's a few reasons why, and one of the reasons why is because of the wording on this commander. There's so many cards now that deal damage to each opponent. And of course, if you have a card on the table that deals damage to each opponent, boy, that's an easy way to close out the game. You just have to focus on that card. And when you have a commander, the card in the command zone, that is dealing damage to each opponent, that's a really powerful effect, right? And on top of that, you're also gaining life. And historic permanent entering the battlefield, boy, that's not very difficult. This doesn't trigger only once each turn or nothing. Nope. If I have 3 artifacts, or let's say I have 2 artifacts and a legendary permanent enter the battlefield, my opponents just took 3 damage and I gained 3 life. This thing gets out of hand so fast. And of course, it only costs 2 mana. So it's really easy to get out right away and start going to town. And the big one, the one where I was like, oh my gosh, legendary lands. A legendary land is a non-token historic permanent entering the battlefield. You fill your deck with legendary lands, and every time you play a land, it's dealing 1 damage to each of your opponents, and you're getting 1 life. Like I said, he demolished us. It was arch enemy pretty quickly, and he still demolished us. This guy definitely, I would imagine, is flying under the radar for a lot of people. Of course, not a lot of people are playing him. I imagine a whole bunch of people have never even seen him before, right? A lot of people don't like the Assassin's Creed set for a variety of reasons, but this is a powerful commander. I'll probably be doing a deck with this guy right away. After that game, I was like, man, you could just do a legendary lands team with this guy, couldn't you? Pretty powerful commander, without a doubt. All right, and the biggest surprise for me from last year's Cabal Profiteering Mayor, and this one, again, falls into that category that I just talked about. This is the most popular commander on this list by far. However, I thought it was going to be one of the most popular commanders from the entire year, and of course, it's not even close. I've had people tell me it's better in the 99, and of course, it's great in the 99. But it's great in the 99 for the same reasons that it's great as a commander, in my opinion. It's very open-ended, and it's good in every commander game. So 1 white and a black human advisor 2/4. Whenever 1 or more tokens enter the battlefield under your opponent's control for each of them, create a tap token that's a copy of it. This ability triggers only once each turn. So whenever your opponents make a token, you get 1. It triggers only once each turn. Okay, fine. But whenever 1 or more tokens enter the battlefield under your opponent's control for each of them. So if your opponent casts, can't use Dockset Extortionist as an example anymore, but if your opponent does something that gives them a bunch of treasure tokens all at once, you're going to get all of them, right? They're going to be tapped, but you're going to get all of them. That is a fantastic ability. As I've been saying for a while now, the commander format is swarming with tokens, okay? To the point where this will sit on the battlefield. And again, if you have not seen this in action, a lot of you probably have seen this guy in action, again, in the 99 decks. And it's just like, okay, every time I make a token, the dude's going to get 1. And then on top of that, because he's creating a token, he's going to drain all of us, because whenever one of our tokens enter the battlefield under your control, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So again, we're doing that thing where your win con is stapled on your commander and just incidental life drain. And not only am I hitting my opponent's life totals, all of them at once, but I'm also gaining life. So of course you can very easily build around the life gain here as well, which of course black and white, lots to build around there, obviously. This commander, in fact, is so good that I thought that you didn't need to build around it at all. You could literally make a black-white good stuff deck, have Kumbal as your commander, and your opponents will just have so many tokens entering the battlefield all the time. You're not only getting free value, but you're draining them. Trust me, I've played against this card quite a bit. I have a patron who has it in the 99 of their deck, and when it comes out, you really just don't want to make tokens, which of course, again, every deck is doing, because not only are they going to get it, but you're going to get drained of life. I know it doesn't seem like much, but it certainly adds up. For me, this is the biggest surprise because I thought it was going to be one of the most popular commanders of last year. It's not the most popular commander, even from Outlaws of Thunder Junction. It's not even in the top 3. It's number 5. Still pretty good, but way, way less popular than I thought it would be. Probably the biggest surprise for me from last year. All right, there you go. Biggest surprises for me from last year. I would say this video is a combination of commanders that I just thought were really great. I'm surprised they're not seeing more play, but also commanders that, for me, not really my thing, but a lot of other people might be playing them. Again, I don't play a lot of tribal decks, so a lot of the tribal commanders here I thought would be more popular, and they're not really at all. And we all know why. Again, at this point, it's really tough to decide what are going to be the commanders everyone's going to be playing. There's like 1 or 2, I find, from every set where it's like, okay, that's crazy busted, and maybe even open-ended, and everyone's going to go after it. But after that, it's like, okay, well, I mean, this commander seems really good, but we get 1,000 commanders a year, so maybe it's just going to get overshadowed, right? The Assassin's Creed commanders that I mentioned in this video are a perfect example. Both of them are really fantastic commanders, but a combination of we get so many commanders, and also it's a followed set that nobody liked. Those commanders are being largely ignored. Maybe check them out for yourself. You guys let me know what you think are the biggest surprises as far as commanders go from last year. That is it for today, though, and thanks for tuning in.